Hi, I'm Rad Simonpillai sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. So there will never be another fashion magazine editor like Anna Wintour. She announced her decision to step down as the editor of Vogue last week after 37 years. Amy Odell and Danya Issawi are here to take stock of her legacy, especially when it comes to the place of celebrities in our culture. Amy is joining us by phone. Danya is here too. Amy, Danya, welcome to Commotion.
Thanks for having us.
So look, before we get into all of Anna Wintour's legacy and this whole story, Danya, I gotta ask, Anna Wintour, she's a trailblazer. She's always had her finger on the pulse of like evolving fashion. In fact, she's been such a driver in terms of those changing trends. Yet the whole time, she's had the exact same haircut. Okay, and I'm talking about, this iconic bob with those heavy bangs, and I just need you to make that make sense for me.
I think, first of all, the bob is fierce. I have to admit, I've seen it in person, and the bob is fierce and thick and smooth. But I think for her, she has like a uniform that works for her. Like her bob is part of her uniform. Her little floral Chanel, dresses and skirts work for her. It's her uniform. And I think what people don't realize and see as much is that a lot of these fashion editors that are like powerful people have a uniform. Like Ton Goodman has a uniform. Lynn Yeager, even though her uniform is a bit like out there, that's her uniform. She's got a bright red bob and like she does her lipstick in a pointed way and wears big florals. I think a lot of these people have to have an outfit that's easy to grab, a hairstyle that's easy to do every morning because they've got a lot of decisions to make throughout the rest of the day. I also personally think it's a signifier of taste. Like, I think people's uniforms can evolve and change, but when you find something that works for you, you just let it stick. And obviously the rest of the industry would crumble if everybody operated like that, but it works for Anna. It works for a lot of them.
Well, yeah, because when you say the industry would crumble, like her letting it stick, that is almost like a fashion faux pas, isn't it? If the rest of us were to do that and not evolve.
Honestly, not in my eyes. I love when people have like a thing. I love when I can look at somebody, understand their whole shtick, and then come back 5 years later and be like, you're still got that shtick going. Love that for you.
Okay, amazing. Okay, well, listen, Amy, you wrote the Anna Wintour's biography, right? And so you got to know a lot about her. Does all of that track for you?
Absolutely. She does wear uniforms. The late Andre Leontali, her longtime collaborator, described it that way to me. And her haircut, the iconic bob, she actually got in the 1960s in London. She grew up in swinging London, which was a very formative experience for her. Fashion was changing a lot at the time. Mini skirts were coming in vogue, and she fell in love and she was seduced. And that's how she became this fashion doyenne and icon that we know her as today. And it was funny in talking to, I interviewed more than 250 people to write the book and some designers. And Tom Ford told me that when she's wearing his clothes, she's not going into Tom Ford and buying them. He sends her a lookbook, which is images of an upcoming collection. And she would just pick out the things that she liked. And he would just send them to her, which I thought was so funny and so fabulous. No one else really gets to shop like that. And she's not only doing that with Tom Ford, she's doing it with so many other designers.
I love that. Okay, well, let's get to actually the thing that made headlines this week. And that's, Anna Wintour's role in the Jeff Bezos, Lauren Sanchez wedding, because she got exclusive access to photos of Lauren Sanchez's wedding dress for Vogue. And she was also credited as a consultant on that dress. Now, for a lot of people, that could come off as tacky. But Danya, why do you think that move actually made sense for Anna Wintour at this stage in her career?
I don't know if it made sense for her, period. Maybe it made sense for her financially. I personally, looking at the cultural response to the wedding and to, Bezos and Sanchez as a couple and like the way they move through the world, it's not great. People don't want to be bombarded with everything they're doing at all times, considering their billions and billions that aren't exactly ethical billions and billions, if there is such a thing. So I don't know if it made sense for her. I'm sure it made sense for her in some financial way that we aren't privy to. Maybe Amy might be able to hypothesize, but I don't personally, if it were me, I would have been like, I'm actually okay. Thank you. I'm going to pass on this one.
Hmm.
But I don't feel like Anna's ever operated like that. She's always, for better or worse, she is following the money. She's following the thing that feels new and envelope pushing, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I personally would not have done this.
Well, Amy, what are you thinking on that front?
Yeah, my speculation, if she did indeed consult on the dress as has been reported, I would imagine that that's because she's a hyper controlling style of editor,
Mm.
and she would want to know what dresses were going to be featured in her magazine. I mean, I talk in my book about instances in which she would ask designers to, tweak their clothes because she was going to photograph them for the magazine. That didn't happen, or maybe like someone on her team would do that. That didn't happen like terribly often, and that wasn't something that only happened in Vogue. But my guess would be if she consulted on it, part of the reason would just be so that she knew what dress she was going to have to feature so prominently. Obviously, yes, that cover, it's an online cover. The story generated a lot of backlash. It's almost surprising to look at the comments on Vogue's Instagram feed, and it's really hard to find anything positive.
Mm.
But Anna's job has evolved a lot in 37 years, and she's not really in the business of selling magazines anymore. She's in the business of generating online impressions and views and engagement. And even though the reaction was negative, she still did drive a lot of engagement. But I think to Danya's point, something interesting for the next head of editorial content for Vogue to think about is, do you take those swings? Do you feature people who are super controversial and seemingly just really not very well liked?
Well, I want to latch on to something you said there, but like just like the controlling aspect where she's literally like telling other people, other designers to fix their dresses for her magazine. I mean, that I think that's built into the legacy of Anna Wintour at this magazine, which I mean, she arrived almost 4 decades ago, and I think shook things up, and also shook up just our relationship to celebrity. Can you talk to me, Danya, about how Anna Wintour achieved that?
I mean, she's always been somebody that from the get-go, like her first cover was considered controversial. She paired like a Christian Lacroix top with a set of jeans on a model, and everybody was like, you cannot be pairing couture with denim, and it was a whole thing. And since then, I think she's been like, whatever, I'm just gonna do whatever I want. And she was the first magazine editor to put a celebrity on the cover of Vogue. It was Madonna, I think 1989. And she has done a really good job of integrating celebrities into fashion and making it cool for them to be interested in fashion
Mm.
and vice versa. And in a way, I do think it's made the general population more interested in fashion. Like when your favorite celebrity is like an ambassador for Chanel, you might be more interested in what Chanel's doing versus, before Anna got involved, it seemed very insular. The fashion industry was interested in that kind of thing. And so to her credit, I think she's done a good job of that. And I mean, look at the Met Gala. Like, she's the reason why the Met Gala is what it is today. It's a spectacle for better or worse, but it raises a ton of money for the museum, and it gets a lot of, sometimes up and coming designers in front of a lot of eyeballs. So you have to give her credit for that.
Well, and I love this idea of her being the one of like merging the world of celebrity and the world of fashion. Because I mean, for me, my introduction to Anna Wintour is a movie called Devil Wears Prada, which we cannot, not talk about, right? Because that's the one where, Meryl Streep gives this portrayal of a character based on Anna Wintour. Let's take a listen to this scene where Meryl Streep's Miranda Priestley lectures Anne Hathaway's lowly assistant about the sweater she's wearing.
What you don't know is that sweater is not just blue, it's not turquoise, it's not lapis, it's actually cerulean. And you're also blithely unaware of the fact that in 2002, Oscar de la Renta did a collection of cerulean gowns. That blue represents millions of dollars and countless jobs. And it's sort of comical how you think that you've made a choice that exempts you from the fashion industry when in fact, you're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room.
So iconic scene that had me shook, and I swear developed my worst shopping habits. I mean, Amy, is that the Anna Wintour that you got to know? Like, is she really Miranda Priestley?
She is in many ways. She is in many ways. And it's funny, I interviewed Aline Brosh McKenna, the screenwriter for The Devil Wears Prada, who did such an amazing job, obviously. And she said that she worked really, really hard on what we just listened to. And Meryl had a lot of notes, and they talked a lot about which color blue they were going to land on. And obviously, it ended up being cerulean. But I asked, it's funny, I feel like so many titans of the fashion industry don't really think about what they mean and what their power is. And I think that's true for Anna. She focuses on the work versus what she represents. And I asked Tom Ford, like, why is she so influential? And he said, I think it's that monologue. However, I will say Anna would not in a run through like that offer that much explanation about her thinking. She also prides herself on she prides herself on manners. She's very particular about manners. So she wouldn't come in and throw her bag and coat at an assistant. So there are some embellishments, but I think a lot of it is very kind of true to life. I think the way Meryl Streep portrays her as icy and, curt, and generally a woman of very few words. One person I interviewed for the book said, when you're talking to Anna, there's not a single wasted adjective. She's just that efficient.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I mean, look, it's actually been a very Anna Wintour news week because, I mean, speaking of The Devil Wears Prada, the sequel, they announced that they started production on the sequel this week. So, Amy, I'm going to ask you to be creative for a moment. I mean, if Miranda Priestley was going to evolve the way that Anna Wintour has, what are we possibly going to see on the big screen when the sequel arrives?
I hope we see a lot of online humor, almost like that show Hacks, which does a good job of showing the differences between two generations. I think there's a really great opportunity for humor there, because as I've read, and I don't know how much is really known about this sequel, it is going to show Miranda Priestley kind of struggling to bring her magazine into the digital age. And I believe sort of in a power struggle with the Emily Blunt character, who may be more digitally savvy. Obviously, Anna, she understands numbers and what success should look like online, which is not to say she's the most digitally savvy person, according to my sources, but she obviously has retained her power. So I think it could be really fun. I have to say, though, I think they really need to hurry up because Anna, how long is she going to be at Condé Nast Sport? We don't really know.
Right. Well, Danya, I mean, I want to talk about what's next for Vogue and Anna. Like, I mean, what kind of person, first of all, do you think will be the best fit to become the editor-in-chief at Vogue?
I think the person who I think is going to be the best fit is not going to be the best fit for Condé Nast. And I think it goes to Amy's point earlier of like, this role is no longer for a person who wants to make a magazine. This is a role for a person who is good at creating online chatter, which aren't necessarily the same thing. Sometimes those things converge upon one another, but not always. In my head, and I'm biased because I like her as a person, love her as a person, Gabriella Carifa Johnson, I think, is a young, fresh fashion editor. She's already left Vogue once, but she just has such a fabulous worldview that feels holistic, and she is an editor grounded in reality. And I would love to see Vogue be grounded in reality once again. I feel like the times we're living through, everybody's kind of just feeling frazzled all the time. And you don't always, of course, we want to see aspirational content. Every human being does to an extent, but you also want to see content that meets you where you're at. And I think somebody like Gabriella or, in her cohort would be able to achieve that.
I love that you're aspiring for grounded in the week that they put the Jeff Bezos Lauren Sanchez wedding on. Like, thank you so much for that. We needed that. Amy, I mean,
we need to do a 360.
Exactly. Amy, I mean, look, these are big shoes to fill. But do you think whoever takes this role will have as much leeway with Anna still staying on at Vogue's parent company, Condé Nast?
I do not. I think it's going to be hard to evolve the magazine with Anna hovering, frankly. She's such a strong editor. And we see this just if you have a vague understanding of what Vogue covers look like, that the magazine has kind of looked the same more or less for like 30 to 40 years. since Anna came on. So I think it is going to be hard to evolve it. That said, we know that there's going to be so many eyeballs on that first cover. I mean, Vogue should hope, for the sake of its own future, that there are so many eyeballs on that first cover. There's going to be a lot of scrutiny. And that person, I can only imagine, is going to feel enormous pressure to deliver a distinct vision. I hope Anna does facilitate the ability of that person to evolve the magazine, because Vogue is an old magazine. It started in the 1890s, I believe 1892, the Gilded Age, and it was about society and what society should wear and should buy. And we may be living through another Gilded Age. So what is Vogue's place in the time that we're living in right now? Like, is it the place of Vogue to, as Danya just said, showcase Jeff Bezos's second wedding in a very positive and celebratory way? So I think it'll be fascinating to see what happens.
Well, look, I mean, this conversation has been fascinating. So I want to thank you both so much for just bringing it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Danya Issawi writes about fashion for The Cut, and Amy Odell is the author of Anna, the biography. You can find it anywhere you buy your books. Her new biography of Gwyneth Paltrow will be out later this month. Danya and Amy were both in New York City.